are recording today's Lunch and Learn, and it will live on our YouTube channel, so it will be publicly available, just so you're aware of that as we're going through our talks today. I always thank everyone for spending your hour with us. This is my favorite part of the week. I get to see artists and community members, both here in Philadelphia, all over the country, sometimes internationally, and it's quite an uplift, and it certainly has been. And this I mentioned last week, and I think maybe Margarita encouraged me to say it again, that it's been 1 year since we started the Lunch and Learns. April 9th was our first one last year. So the guest on that one happened to be Glenn Adamson. And if any of you know Glenn, he has curated an exhibition that is up at Crystal Bridges Art Museum right now. It's called Crafting America, and it looks amazing. If anyone's near there, please go see it. Otherwise, there's some nice online virtual events happening around that exhibition. And maybe at the end, I'll share a few other craft exhibitions that are happening that I'm really excited about.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to say that the place where the Clay Studio stands and where I sit today is part of the traditional land of the Lenni Lenape. We acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land and their continuing relationship with their territory. In our acknowledgement of the continued presence of Lenape people in their homeland, we affirm the aspiration of the great Lenape chief Tamanend, that there be harmony between the indigenous people of this land and the descendants of the immigrants, as long as the rivers and creeks flow and the sun, moon, and stars shine. Well, thank you for that. And we have 8 artists joining us today, which is our biggest Lunch and Learn yet, to celebrate our biggest exhibition of the year, which is SmallFavors. And we have 200 artists represented in that show, and it has really gotten a lot of really great attention. I think it was an easy thing for people to look at from home. It's very understandable. Everything's in its little plexi box. And my colleagues, Josie Bockelman, Naima Stith, and Shannon Jones did an amazing job photographing all 300 pieces in the show in their boxes. So thanks to all of them, and Raymond Rourke, who is our graphic designer, who's always integral in our exhibition planning. So thanks to all my colleagues there. I'm just going to read everyone's name first, and then we will start with Wade McDonald. Then we're going to have Andrew Casto, Terri Saulin, Linley Erickson, Diana Chamberlain, and Sujata Jagota, Kim Hall, and Justin Hartigan, and Stephanie Osser. So let's start with Wade, shall we? I'm going to share my screen. So you can...
Hello, everyone.
I'm happy to read your bio if you want before we start.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Let me just get myself in order here. There we go. Wade McDonald is a professor of art and ceramics at the University of Alabama. He studied at Michigan State and Western Michigan University. Through the process of research, ideation, and practice, he celebrates the human element of contemporary architecture and the vessel and their relationship to the complexities of existing within a 21st century global society. So take it away, Wade.
All right. There's my work. So I'm kind of known to be more of a mixed media ceramic artist. I do a lot with woodworking in conjunction with like plastics, digital fabrication, complex mold making. I went to Michigan State University back in 2011 when the Broad Museum was designed by Zaha Hadid, was not built yet. It was just being started. And I was drawn to that program in part because of Paul Catula and Blake Williams and Jay Wan Lee and this incredible museum that was being built. And so over the 3-year period of my program, I was able to watch that building come into existence. And my work was transformed by that experience. And I think I was I tasked myself with finding the similarities between ceramics and architecture, and kind of exploiting or highlighting those aesthetic similarities, because I think that especially with architecture, deconstructivist architecture, there is a visual vocabulary that I think is pertinent to where we are as a society. And I think bringing that into ceramics kind of imbues pottery, or imbues ceramic form with the meaning of deconstructivism.
So how do you, when you say that you think it reflects, I think you said our contemporary society, is it the deconstructionist part of it that you see sort of taking things apart? How do you make that connection?
Well, I think that just moving through a space that is not, the purpose of that space is not to function in you know like a normal sense, right? So I think it can be disorientating. It can be confusing. It can
Intentionally so.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that like architecture, functional ceramics can still function, but also reflect some of those aesthetic decisions. And so I am beginning to make pottery. I'm at the beginning stages of that, and I really like it. It's a unique challenge for me to do that, having come from a mixed media background. So with these pieces, what I'm doing is I'm starting out with, I'm modeling them digitally, and then I'm printing them with plastic, and I make a mold, usually a 4 or 5 part mold of these pieces, and then they're slip cast. And then I have a taped pattern that I put over the faceted areas, and then I use underglazes and glaze to create these pieces. So
the pattern has negative space. You're not using a decal, you're creating it with a tape situation.
Yeah.
So what was it that made you want to, in our 1 more minute, go to functional? Like, was it something about modern life? Was it kind of a desire to get more close to the human body or home? I don't know. Talk to me about that.
I think the move to making some pots is the speed of it. Yeah, I mean, my practice is extremely slow, and it takes, can take months or years to create like a body of work, or even like, one piece might take a year. So that's not like a realistic timeline for being in academia. And so part of it is like pragmatic, but I also like really, I like to, I love it when people use my work. I mean, it's a great sensation. So I like it because of that. And it's incredibly rewarding, to have people use your work and collect your work, and yeah, and I like to diversify. I think that diversification is good.
Yeah, I always think it's so interesting when artists, I guess especially in ceramics, it's particularly possible to go between sculptural non-functional stuff and functional work, and the parameters, the problem solving parameters for each are so different, but when you get to move between them, it's like you're being freed from each, and so you can kind of appreciate the freedom, the reversal of freedom in each one. I think I'm making sense, but
no, that's perfect. Yeah.
And we had that great moment of Andrew telling Paul how much he enjoyed using his piece, and then you were saying someone actually using your object is very satisfying. So
yeah.
that's a good segue into our next artist, who is Andrew. Thank you, Wade.
Thank you.
And Andrew Casto is our next artist. And oops, I will move forward here. Oops. Andrew Casto lives and works in Iowa City. He's been a fellow at the Archie Bray Foundation in Montana and has exhibited work in more than 10 countries around the world. Casto was a 2015 Emerging Artist for NCECA, and he is currently Associate Professor and Program Head of Ceramics at the University of Iowa. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your normal body of work and then the challenge of working small for SmallFavors?
Yeah, sure. I generally am working in a way that I hope shows evidence or speaks to the reality of gravity with the material, and offers parallels between sort of this focus on materiality as affected by nature with my own experiences having to do with stress or accumulation of responsibility in life. So to me, this is a bit of an autobiographical kind of formal investigation. And
that hits close to home.
Yeah, it's a great time, right, for this. Much like a lot of things for me, this work evolved by accident. I greatly admire Wade's slip casting, but I am a terrible slip caster personally. And this work evolved from not fully understanding how to reclaim casting slip and discovering that if you just add water to clay casting scraps, you get the thickest mush you can imagine, and then deciding that I wanted to try and work with that. So that was probably 15 years ago now, plus a few, a lot of experimentation, but I work almost exclusively with this really incredibly dense, thick casting slip, kind of draped over or layered on top of porcelain and stoneware forms. And to me, it's a good metaphor for things kind of showing up in life and learning to manage them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so are the colors intentionally chosen, or is this another use of kind of something that was discarded?
No, I'm pretty intentional about the colors. There's a few different surfaces that I use. Oftentimes I'm working with stains to achieve color combinations I'm interested in. But yeah, it's, I don't know. And you asked also about working small for the show as well. And, it's been, I love this exhibition. I think this is the second time I've done it. And it's, this time I was actually moving studios when the invitation happened, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. But then I remembered I have a whole bunch of pieces that I made actually at a residency in Valéry's, France, and it's difficult to ship things back home when you make them in another country, and it's also, and I mean, Europe particularly, and a place like that, it's hard to work very large. So I spent the time that I was there making essentially maquettes for larger pieces out of kind of unfamiliar materials. In this case, Limoges porcelain, which was beautiful and just incredible to work with. But recognizing that I had these pieces that I had kind of put on the back burner for a while, I grabbed a few of them and reglazed some things and put one of them together for this show. So yeah, it was really fun to do this and to kind of like revisit those pieces, which were originally made in 2017 and then brought back with this application of glaze and luster for this exhibition. So
can you talk a little bit about the black and white? How did you achieve the stripy pattern?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I was in this essentially, 15th century basement of an apartment, kind of building in this very old, might be 16th century, is older than anything in Iowa that I see for sure. Yeah. But in any case, not a lot of space and sort of haphazard materials left over from previous residents. And I had about maybe 200 pounds of porcelain to work with. And so I was experimenting with stains that they had there and doing body staining with the porcelain and seeing what I could produce through that. So I just had a few different kind of colors of clay. I made some things that are more of like a Delft blue kind of look as well. But I like this kind of chocolatey brown that was happening also. So I was essentially just marbling the clay together in various pieces.
I was thinking, were you laminating like the?
Yeah, right.
Cool. That's great. Well, thank you so much. And I just realized I don't have the titles of the pieces right in front of me, but I think I remember this one being particularly poetic. And do you remember what the title is?
Yeah, so I called it Squid for Algernon because it looks like a squid to me, for starters, but also because probably like many of you, I spend most of my days when I'm in the studio listening to podcasts and news, and I think about the flowers for Algernon kind of the message of that kind of story being about how much information is helpful for the ethics of information, let's say. And for me, sometimes I have to consider the ethics of the amount of information that I take in for my own kind of mental health. And so, often I'm oversaturated by news that disturbs me or bothers me and that I feel helpless about. And so I'm just, pretty often thinking about the balance of how to be productive and at the same time informed and conscious of what's happening in the world around me, but also not kind of succumb to, sadness as a result. So.
Yeah, that is certainly, in addition to the first couple comments you made about your work, and it feels very apropos of this moment, but really just kind of modern life right now, I think. Great. Okay, thank you so much, Andrew. That was wonderful and illuminating.
Thank you.
I love that a little lump of beautiful colors can mean all those things.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, excellent. Thank you. We have Terri up next. And I'm gonna tell you all that Terri Saulin earned her MFA from the University of the Arts and her BFA from Moore College of Art and Design. She's an art teacher at the Agnes Irwin School and a founding member of the multi-city art collective Tiger Strikes Asteroid. She recently opened No. 5 Butchie Alley, which is a gallery and outgrowth of her own studio practice. I think I sort of gleaned that from your website. I hope it was accurate.
Totally accurate. It used to be my garage, my dirty, smelly, nasty garage. So it's kind of nice to have an empty room again.
It looks amazing. I can't wait to visit it in person.
Thanks. It had like 100-year-old stuff that wasn't mine, and like lots of other people. So it was nice to get rid of all that.
That's great. Well, and that's, I feel like a bit related to, especially the piece that's on the right here. Do you want to talk a little bit about your general body of work and then switch to SmallFavors?
I live in a South Philly row home, and over the years, I've basically been taking it apart and rebuilding it. And like through that process, I've found like a lot of really wild construction methods. I bought my house from my neighbors, and they're from Italy, and they were like concrete masters, like wizards, like making like pretty much everything out of cast concrete, these amazing like flower pots and things like that. And as I was like going through and trying to like destroy parts of my house, I realized that they had like made this impenetrable fortress by dipping the one sister's pantyhose in concrete and like wrapping like lath and wood and like basically encasing these things together. Like this, I can't even describe like the material, but it was really, really interesting. So that kind of filtered into the work that I was making. At the time, I was also reading Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities, which kind of really shaped a lot of what I was doing. Just that whole idea of like, just architecture in general, and how architecture is like a vessel for people that I was sort of making these architecturally informed vessels that also ended up being for people. They started to become like urns and shrines and for important people, and also kind of love letters to other artists and musicians. That little row of little tiny pieces, that group of 6, they were all dance partners for last year's Small Favors. I love a good homework assignment. And like, I look at Small Favors every year now, whether I participate in it or not, as like an Olympic challenge that like always sends me in like another direction. So these are the like this year I scaled it back and I went the opposite way and I made really sort of minimal quiet things. So like that's the amazing part about this. I love to say that it's a great homework assignment.
I love to hear that you enjoy that. I don't think all artists like homework assignments, but I've actually had a couple of people say over the years that they didn't think they would want an assignment, but once they had one, they got really inspired by it and it kind of affected their work going forward. So yeah, I think we all need to step outside of ourselves sometimes and say like, well, you know, what can I do to connect?
Yeah.
So I also noticed that these are a lot more, I'll say functional than the ones from last year and some other ones. So were you thinking also about what seems like a theme here, that people can use the object?
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it too is like, now that I have like that little space that I can just sell work from out of my garage. So I was trying to think of ways that I could kind of scale back and make things that are more portable and more accessible, like, and that I could have like at a price point where, you know, pretty much everybody couldn't collect. I'm also part of an organization in Philly called Philly Stewards. And it's a small organization of people that are basically just trying to encourage people to collect art from local artists, and realize that there are multiple price points and multiple entry points into being able to collect work, which is another huge part of Small Favors too. I feel like that's like a wonderful invitation for pretty much anyone to make, like, you know, Sergei Osipov's like amazing work like accessible, you know, so, and Margarita's work accessible, and you know, it's just a great opportunity and an interesting way to look at like your work as like couture and pret-a-porter, like things that are at one scale and things that are at another entry point.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think I've mentioned before, this is the 16th year of Small Favors, and it really was started both for variety in terms of artists, being able to have everyone from a student at the clay studio or somewhere else to, you know, a very well-known ceramic artist, and then the variety of people who are able to collect the work also was intended to be wide. Like you're saying, we have to kind of demystify what it means to collect art, and certainly a cup is a good entry point. We always talk about the shop at the clay studio in that way as well, that we can have someone walk in and ask why this mug costs $75. We have a chance to kind of talk to them about why it costs that much, and how it's art, but they can also use it for their coffee, and how that can, you know, we believe that can enrich your life. And so that's what Small Favors does too. It's a way to spread the word. Not to be creepy, but so thank you so much, Terri. I love to see the difference between, you know, you're approaching Small Favors each year and thinking of it in different ways. And we'll look for more number 5 Butchie Alley to come, see what happens.
Oh, nice to meet everybody.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that's good about these lunch and learns. The artists get to meet each other, and it's really hit me over the last few weeks. I've never had a chance to engage with the Small Favors artists so deeply, because we get these wonderful things and we live with them, but we don't connect to a face and hear everyone's response. So it's a bit of a silver lining to the strange place we're living in now. Okay, so now we're going to move to Linley Erickson. Linley lives and works in Chicago. She studied history at Juniata College and since then has taught ceramics at, oh, and I edited the other one, but not the one I'm reading. So she's going to tell us where she teaches because I'll mess up the name. And she's also nurtured a fascination with the Swedish tradition of Dala animals. Linley, do you want to talk a little bit? Well, first tell us the real name of the place. I apologize.
Kids Clayroom.
Kids Clayroom. Why can't I remember that? It seems pretty simple. So do you want to tell us about your interest in ceramics and Dala animals in general?
Yeah, so I came to clay in college and I just had this really, it was a great time because, you know, when you're working in history all the time, you never really interact that much. Well, I guess, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this. I fell in love with clay and
you needed to touch something with your hands.
Yeah, I needed to touch, I needed to be able to manipulate it and, you know, turn it into what I wanted it to be. And I fell in love with my professor there, Bethany Benson, and Bethany and I share Swedish ancestry. So when I came to Bethany during our slip casting project and I said, can I do a Dala horse? She got very excited. So I started with the horse and then I moved on to the rooster and then I moved on to the pig. And I've just kind of been gathering all of the traditional wood carved animals. This is a wood carved Dala horse. And I've kind of just been collecting all of the animals into my work. I have been bringing in other animals who are not traditional to the Swedish folk art tradition. And they bring me a lot of joy and they bring joy to other people. And I think that's my main purpose with art. You know, I want to show people, this is my heritage. Look at how cute it is.
I love it.
That's
joy and
that's kind of me.
Cute things are definitely high on my list. I want to show everybody, especially this Linley's Dala pig in the SmallFavors box. Look how small it is compared to the box. And
It's tiny.
I wanted to show a different picture so that you could see the detail on it rather than just this little tiny guy almost getting lost in the 4-inch box because he's so little. So is this the smallest Dala animal you've ever made?
This is pretty average for me. This is how the pigs, so I start off, this is the wooden one, which is a little bit smaller and a little bit skinnier. Yep. But then each one is hand carved. So they always come out very, very tiny. And there's just something about the pigs, man. They've got their own little personality and I love them so much. And this one has a more of a traditional design that is very traditional to the original wood carved animal. So that's why I titled this one Traditional Dala Pig, even though it isn't very traditional. But that's kind of my whole thing. You know, it's like I'm taking this idea, this art form that's been set into Swedish history for hundreds of years, and I'm kind of just kind of tweaking it just a little bit.
Is the tradition from where they're farmers, where they make them kind of as totems to keep their animals healthy? Or I don't know, I just made that up. Is there?
So there's a lot of conflicting ideas. There's this one that basically it all boils down to the farmers of Dalarna didn't have much to do during the winter. And for some reason, they started carving the horses out of wood and they started painting them and all this stuff. And then along came the rooster later and along came the pig. And in the past few decades, they've added a moose.
Yeah.
And it's just, you'll see if you type in like Dala horse, even into Etsy, you'll find like a cat. Somebody's done a trout.
Yeah.
You know, I do a water buffalo now. This is my Dala water buffalo. And like, it's just kind of expanded. And like, to quote, there was this short-lived TV show done by Amy Poehler's brother called Welcome to Sweden, where he goes and moves to Sweden to be with the woman he loves. And he asks his girlfriend's father about a doll horse. Like, why do you have that? And he's like, it makes me happy. And I'm like, that right there. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Doll
well,
animals make us happy.
and I think that that can be said too of just making ceramics or making any craft, like the fact that they were making them in the winter. They were using creativity and craft to kind of ward off probably depression. And it's really, it can sound very like a toss off to say that this makes me happy or it's cute or I'm enjoying it, but it's actually a pretty deep reason why all of us love making things and craft and art. It's integral to our mental health. So
Exactly.
thank you so much, Linley. I appreciate your cute doll pig. Glad to have
Thank
it on
you.
the show. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, we're going to move to Diana Chamberlain, who is the closest person physically to me because she lives in my neighborhood. And you have to unmute yourself, Diana. I'm going to read you. Diana Chamberlain studied at St. Martin's School of Art in London and the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. She began working in clay at Silverman Guild of Artists in New Canaan, Connecticut, where she was a guild member. And she now lives in Philadelphia and makes work in her home studio and at the clay studio. Welcome, Diana. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your general body of work and the challenge of working small?
Yes, well, the piece in the show is quite unlike these, and I made it to be like a piece I have at home, which is a large piece, and it's like everything I do, it's hand built, and I'm using a lot of color now, which is really unusual for me because I've mostly worked in white and porcelain, and one of the piece on the left here is a kind of a village. It's titled Shelter because, and it really is sort of is because partly I got the feeling for this from visiting Italy a lot, where people live in community with each other. They tend to live in quite tall houses, which are centered around squares, and they come out of their houses and meet in the square, and they're standing there with their shopping bags, or they're sitting and shelling the peas together, or the men are chatting and smoking, and there's a great sense of community. And I think we've lost a lot of that. This last year has been weird, but I think we have. I think people stay in their houses and watch television and don't mix with each other. There isn't the same sort of passagieri in the evening where everybody walks around and talks to each other, all different generations. I was also really bothered about homelessness. There were very terrible situations in Africa a few years ago where there was a lot of warfare and people were just having to leave their homes and take off, and they were basically living under straw or anything they could find. It was really a dire situation, and that's become a ton worse over years since then. And living in Philadelphia now, I've lived here for a year, and homelessness is a thing that we see around us all the time. There was an encampment down by the museums last year that stayed there for a very long time, people with nowhere to live. It was really, really sad. And now it's more dispersed, but if you walk under bridges by the river, there are people sleeping in tents. So it's an enormous problem. And so the image of the home, I think, is really important. And I think can be expressed very well in clay. After all, clay is what makes houses. I mean, it's the start of everything. The first houses were made in clay, more or less. And houses are shells that protect us, where we can be pretty safe and protected, and without it there's very little safety. And so this piece was really to sort of channel the need for shelter and community. And then moving on to the second one, that I made this year, started it last year actually, but I've been making it all the time. These sort of tall buildings, definitely city buildings, a bit like Impressionists' ideas of cities, which sort of wave upwards, a bit like plants, and especially in Paris. But I started making buildings a little like this a couple of years ago, when I made plants kind of burst out of the side of buildings. And they were partly influenced by visiting Philadelphia, where buildings have a wonderful asymmetry. They kind of tilt and almost lean and curve, and I love that. And so I was making these very sort of off-kilter buildings with plants bursting out the side. And I'm a very keen gardener. I love nature, but I also love cities. So anyway, coming to live here, I'm a bit obsessed with gardens on roofs.
Yeah.
This piece, it shows that actually. I mean, it's a city, but there's tons of green. I mean,
we hope that this is
nature,
more and more, right?
Yes, it's intruded. And, I like the world up there, where you have a view and you have sunsets and you can see across to other places, and there are gardens. And this actually happens in New York City as well. If you get high up, if you go in the New Whitney, you can look across to gardens, sort of floating there as a world above, which I really enjoy. So it's I think clay is awfully good for the sense of architecture, and I think two previous people have mentioned that. It's so soft when it comes out of its block. There it is, especially porcelain, very, very soft, but it can turn into architecture. And because it's a three-dimensional thing, when you make something out of clay and place it in your house, it becomes part of the architecture of the house. And I love that it's like a hard shell when it's made. It's this soft, malleable material that when it's fired, it's just like bricks. I mean, it is
bricks. Yeah, absolutely. And then that transformation being so magical, I think, is part of what draws people to the process, for sure.
It really is. Yes, it's amazing. Yeah, it just completely transforms. It's paradoxical. There it is, silky smooth and almost flowing, and then it fuses into this very hard form. And I love the parody of that. So.
Do you want to, we have one more minute. Do you want to talk about, are you coming back a bit to your painting from earlier life here, or what inspired you to add the color?
I am. Yes, so I've got really invested in underglazes, and I'm painting on tiles quite a lot. I'm finding my drawing skills back. And I used to have a notebook with me all the time and drew all the time. I mean, wherever I went and whatever I did, I would be drawing. And that was my main focus at art school. And that went into printmaking. That was obviously the thing. But I sort of slightly dropped that going into clay, which I adore for its three-dimensionality. But I'm now injecting back color and drawing.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. And I think that might be a theme in some future couple of more people too. Thank you so much, Diana. This was lovely. So glad to have you as a guest. You're such a loyal listener of Lunch and Learn.
Oh, I've loved Lunch and Learn. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. Okay, next we have Sujata Jagota. Her background is in chemistry and material sciences as a teacher and a researcher. She's been working with clay and taking part-time classes in ceramics for 16 years. And she says her background in chemistry especially informs her ceramic work with novel glaze formulations. And she lives in Bethlehem. So let me switch my pin here.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. There you are.
So
now you're at the front for everyone. would you like to talk about your general body of work and then the challenge of working small?
Sure. Yeah, I work mainly with the stoneware clay, and I fire at cone 6 electric, so it's all very basic. And I've been fascinated by clay all my life. So my PhD was on crystallization of aluminum oxide, which has not much to do with clay, but I used to walk by the clay studio, and I was always fascinated by this idea of beauty in functionality, which is at the basis of a lot of handmade work. So I always thought I would go to that. And finally, I was lucky enough to be able to do that. So I do a lot of wheel throwing, and initially I really wanted to make very beautiful work which people would use. So, my friends from very early on had these terrible mugs that I made for them. And
I'm
but
sure they love them.
yeah, as I worked more with clay, I discovered that you could do a lot more with it. You could express a lot of other things with it. And I have worked with a lot of coil pieces too, tree forms, sculptural forms. And I've been fascinated to use ash glazes, which again, friends would give me ash out of their fireplaces. And it was amazing to feel, that you could actually make it into something beautiful on a piece of clay. So that's one of the things I've been doing recently. And also I've been lucky enough to be able to do specialty firings with other groups. So raku, so this piece on the right is actually a raku fired elephant motif, which I cannot do in my studio here, but I have a group that does it. And also other firings like horsehair, sagar, naked raku. I'm sure you're all very familiar with them, but for me, it was again the joy of discovery that one of our potters group, she had a workshop on burnishing. And, so we all learned how to burnish clay. And again, it was so different from my past experience of work, because this was really meditative. It created beauty, and it was the actual, the experience of doing this, which was so amazing. This piece is raku, the one on the right, and it is this elephant form. So recently I came up with this, and a lot of my potter friends ask me, how did you think of it? And some of them says, oh, this has to be in your DNA because you're from India. I don't know, it's just that once you see a certain shape and form and you get obsessed with it, you just keep making it. I don't know if you all have that experience. Well,
we know Linley does with the Dala horses. So it's just another animal. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and elephants are they're fascinating animals.
Yeah, I didn't really grow up around elephants in India. I mean, I had a very urban kind of upbringing, but I guess they were around. And but it came out of two things. So I was working a lot with closed forms. When you make a form and just close it up on the wheel, it's a kind of pear-shaped form. I don't know if you can see. This is one of them.
Yep.
So this became the body of the elephant, if you turn it around. And then all the other attachments are built on slab. And the other one is just on the wheel modified. This is that same elephant with an ash glaze. I don't know if you
can see. I can see the face.
Yeah.
That's great.
So this one came out of these closed forms, which I would make on the wheel and then turn them into different objects. And so this is, a teapot of the same closed form.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a luminary, but it was basically that. And then to make it for small favors, of course, was the challenge of making it small enough. So the original, these elephant pieces were salsa bowls. The body of the elephant is a bowl.
Oh.
And then I had done a small salt and pepper one once, which one of my potter friends liked very much. And she said, oh, you should make one of these for Small Favors at the clay studio.
Yay.
So I started working on it. And then I realized that when you make things smaller, it's easier in some ways. You know, you don't have to make a big piece. You don't have to throw that on the wheel. But it's much harder to get the same detail, you know, on a smaller size. And for this elephant, really, everyone told me its eyes are the most important. You know, so there's some which come out really evil and mean looking, and nobody likes them. So to make the eyes, you have to.
Oh, no.
They would close all the holes if you wanted those in there. So the black one, which is the original one, which we saw on the last slide, that has this very nice black runny glaze, but that didn't work. So I had to find the right glaze, and I didn't formulate my own, but I'm sure you all know John Britt's glaze book and glazy.org. So I looked it up, and then I came up with this much more matte gray glaze, which seems to work. And again, I had to change the clay too, because the dark clay I used, it didn't work well on that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I call this the muddy elephant. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah, it's the
It's the
that's the
same
mommy.
gray glaze, but it has all these blotches on it. But on porcelain, it worked really well.
Yeah.
So,
But it's a great color and texture for the elephant. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. And I'm glad to tell your friend I said thank you for telling you to apply to Small Favors.
oh yeah, thanks. It's great to be here, and it's really amazing for me to listen to everyone, you know, all the real artists who are here, and how
You're a
they
real
approach their
artist.
work.
Don't say that. We love it. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna next invite Kim Hall and Justin Hartigan. As soon as I find them, there they are. And Kim earned her MA in textiles from Central St. Martin and currently teaches illustration practice at MICA in Baltimore. She's drawn or designed for clients like Coach, Hussein Chalahan, Chronicle Books, and Anthropology. Justin is a self-taught printmaker. His background is in advertising, client relations, project management, and sound design. So thank you and welcome to you both. Did I spell Justin's last name correctly?
No.
No.
That's
all right. What is it? Is it a T?
It's an S. Hartigan.
Hartigan. And you even put it in the chat.
I get called Jason all the time. So the
Hartigan.
first name's good. Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, S-O-N, like a hearty son.
I don't know why I had trouble.
That's all right.
All right. There we go. Now it's right, everybody.
Beautiful.
Well, thanks to you both for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your general work and then your small favors?
Yeah, we're like real outliers here. We have like a surface design focus, and we make wallpaper, and we do all kinds of other projects. You can see a couple of them here. We're in the middle of a mural project right now. That's the mock-up on the right. Which
where's it going to be?
It's going to be in South Philly.
Nice.
I think we have a wall, but I feel like maybe I can't say yet.
TBD at the moment.
We have one more community meeting next week to like make sure we're all. So the wall that is shown on here is just a mock-up. It's not on that wall. But yeah, so that's coming up. And it's interesting, you know, when I was pulling the images that, you know, trying to figure out what we would send to you for this, I realized like we're working on something so big right now. It's like the biggest thing we've ever done. And our work for Small Favors, I've followed the show for a long time. I just always love to see what everybody does. And the image on the previous screen on the left, the dollhouse, when we went into lockdown last year, you know, it just meant like we couldn't install anything. We couldn't, you know, nobody could have anything installed. And so we didn't get any photographs from any interior designers. And it was like suddenly like all the things that we could do to talk about our work were we couldn't get anything new. And being like inside all the time, we couldn't photograph anything even ourselves outside of our own house. And so I started doing these little virtual doll houses and installing wallpaper in Photoshop. And the tininess of them was just so enjoyable. And we got such great like feedback, like people really loved them and enjoyed them. And so we offered to, we were doing them virtually for other people. Like you could send us a picture of your living room or bedroom and I could mock up like what the wallpaper would look on there. So we started just feeling like things felt really small. And so when the call came for SmallFavors, it just felt like, oh, we could make a really tiny roll of wallpaper. It would be so fun.
I have to share with you that it was a little confusing. The pictures that you sent for the application, I think maybe one of them was a real full-size version, or no, maybe it was. And so we were like, wait, I don't understand. What are they applying with? It's just like a full size.
Right.
But then your dimensions and, if you read through everything, it indicated that you were going to make a tiny version. But I was like, it's just like a roll of, beautiful wallpaper, but full size. How are we going to do that? But I was very excited.
I think the picture of the pink one, like that's in the show, like I just sent a picture of like the wallpaper, like hanging down the, we have like some shots that are like our standard shots to like show what the wall, like the roll looks like unrolled, so you get a sense of it.
Right, and
so
it had like white covered
scale.
brick behind it. Yeah. So it's like, that's our full scale bricks. I don't get it.
Yeah.
So hopefully you like the way it was put in the box. And we were also trying to figure out how to get it in there to make people understand. it.
I thought about it when I was rolling, making the roll, because when I printed it, it's just like a long sheet. I knew I had to make the roll. But I realized it's not going to roll and unroll the same way as an actual roll of wallpaper. So yeah, it looks beautiful.
I guess I could have put it the other way. That would have made more sense. Anyway.
Well, no, then the flowers would be upside down.
Oh, right. That's true. Okay.
You did the right thing.
Got it. Excellent. Well, I can't spell the names, but I got the names in the box the right way. So
I think that's the better skill to have.
All right. Well, I'm already considering sending you pictures of rooms in my house to apply your wallpaper to. So I'm excited. I'm so glad that you both decided to be in the show and that I've gotten to know your work, and I'm going to keep a lookout for that mural. So, Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right. So we have one more artist, Stephanie Osser, who's going to join us. And there she is.
Hello.
Hello. Stephanie Osser studied at Pratt and the Royal Academy of Art in Amsterdam and Bennington College. And then she pursued graduate studies in ceramics at the University of Montana, where she shared yesterday that she studied with Rudy Audio. So that's right. Stephanie. Yeah.
Yes.
And she then built a career in illustration before returning to ceramics, and now I think is balancing both, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I'll explain to you. I guess it'll make sense to everyone. If you look at the image on the right and you look down below, you'll see an illustration of turtles swimming, hatching out of their eggs and swimming into the water. And I took this image to, first I took the image to Hungary, and I did a residency at the International Ceramic Studio there in Kecskemét. And I worked with their exquisite porcelain. They fired the stuff to cone 12 or 13, and the porcelain is just amazing. And so if you look at the image just below the, let's look at the left-hand images. The center of that cello, that viola da gamba player is the finished product with backlighting. But the image on the right is a very low bas relief, and it's carved on plaster. All of you could do it easily. Very, very shallow. And then once you pour porcelain slip on top of that, a very thin pouring of maybe 1/8 of an inch, you get the image on the left. And there's nothing exciting about it until you cast a light behind it. So all of you people have these gorgeous entries in the SmallFavors show, but every one of you need light to show off your pieces, but I need dark. And so it's always an issue if I'm in a show with these things, it doesn't really work. But but you can see, you know,
we work it out.
That, yeah. So I have a source for the night lights, for the sockets and the brackets. I can tell you about that, and you can see on the right is the piece that's in the show.
Yeah,
I call it Baba Light Keep.
And it's magical. And I think you told me that you're having an article that comes out in Ceramics Monthly in the fall. Is that right? With some instructions.
I'm giving you all the information you need to take this on the road, and you can all do it.
And there's also and they're called lithophanes, right?
Lithophane. Oh yes, and if any of you have a chance to go to Ohio, the lithophane, the only one in the world, that's where it all started for me. I went to visit before I went to that residency, and the museum in Ohio, the Blair Museum of Lithophanes, has just left Toledo, and they have gone to the Sheedell Arboretum and Gardens in Elmore, Ohio. They're opening in May. And it's a fabulous collection. I'm lucky that they chose one of mine, and they gave me a solo show in 2019, which is all about my former children's book and how it evolved into lithophanes and also print on porcelain.
That's great. I'm definitely going to go there if I have a chance. I know it was a really popular thing to do in the 19th century, and it kind of, I think it fell away a bit. So it's nice that there's a bit of a resurgence, and you're helping to drive the resurgence of lithophanes. Thank you, Stephanie. So thank you to all of the artists. I know that we're 2 minutes over, but I am just gonna look at the chat really quick to see if there's any questions that we want to have answered. Somebody is asking Diana about the scale of her work, the skyscraper buildings.
Oh, it's very large. It's a large installation. It was about 5 feet by 5 feet square.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, and then a lot of the other comments are just about how wonderful everybody's work is and how everyone enjoyed them. So I'm gonna make sure I send the chat to all of the artists so you get to see those nice comments. Have it on paper if you haven't been looking at the chat. And I want to say thank you again to all of our artists and all of the rest of you. Oh, I promised I was gonna say some more exhibitions. The Fabric Workshop and Museum right now has, it's called Hardcover. It's ceramics and printmaking artists together. There is the Shapes from Out of Nowhere is at the Metropolitan Museum, just opened. That's kind of mid-century abstract ceramic sculptures collected by Mr. Bob Ellison. So that's an exciting exhibition. I mentioned Crystal Bridges. And opening in a few weeks at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, there's a show called New Grit, which is Philadelphia contemporary artists. And I think 75% of the artists in the show are using craft materials. So that's exciting to me. It's not a craft specific show. It is an art show with lots of craft material in it. So there we go. Thanks everybody and have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for sharing with us.
Jennifer.
Bye everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye Terri. See you soon. Bye Stephanie. Bye everybody.
Bye.
I want to say I still appreciate the tenacity of those birds.